The Great Hall of Valdrren had never been so crowded. Illaoan pressed herself deeper into the shadows of the eastern corridor, her heart hammering against her ribs as she watched the ceremony unfolding below. Thousands of candles flickered from iron chandeliers, casting dancing light across the faces of clan leaders, nobles, and commoners who had traveled from every corner of the kingdom to witness this moment. The choosing. She shouldn't have come. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to return to the tiny servants' quarters where she had hidden for 3 days, waiting for word from Theon. But he had sent nothing, no message, no explanation, only silence. And so, she had come to see for herself. The Alpha King stood on the high dais at the end of the hall, his broad shoulders stiff beneath a black and silver ceremonial tunic. Even from this distance, Illaoan could see the sharp cut of his jaw, the dark hair falling over his forehead, and the commanding aura that made lesser wolves bow their heads in instinctive submission. For the past 6 months, she had known a different side of him, the man who whispered her name like a prayer in the darkness of the forest, the man whose hands trembled when he touched her face, the man who had pressed his lips to the mark on her hip. That bite mark was the secret he had given her on the night he swore she was his fated mate. When the council's demands are met, he had promised, his breath warm against her skin, I will announce you to the world. You will be my queen, Illaoan. Nothing can change that. She had believed him. Her hand moved instinctively to her lower belly, where another secret was growing, a secret she had planned to tell him tonight after the ceremony, when he sought her out as he always did. Let the candidate step forward, the elder announced, his ancient voice echoing through the deathly silent hall. Illaoan's nails dug into her palms as 5 women in flowing white gowns ascended the steps. They were daughters of the most powerful bloodlines in Valdrren. Each was beautiful. Each had been trained since birth for this opportunity. And at their center, with hair like moonlight and eyes of glacial blue, was Lysera of House Vanthorn. A murmur of approval swept through the crowd. The Vanthorns controlled the northern territories, commanded 3,000 warriors, and had prepared their daughter for this moment for years. Illaoan searched Theon's face for any sign of the man she knew. Any warmth, any recognition, or the love he had sworn was eternal. His expression was carved from stone. Theon, Alpha King of Valdrren, blood of the first wolves. The elder intoned. You have heard the council's counsel. You have considered the treaties and alliances. The kingdom awaits your choice. The silence stretched like a blade. Illaoan held her breath. The mark on her hip burned beneath her dress, a phantom heat pulsing with every heartbeat. Surely he could feel it too. Surely he would turn, find her in the crowd, and declare that his choice had already been made in the secret clearings beneath the moonlight, where 2 souls had recognized each other as one. Theon stepped forward. Illaoan realized his movements were strange, stiff, and mechanical. His gait lacked the fluid grace she was so familiar with. And his eyes, those amber eyes that used to burn with passion when they looked at her, now looked flat, distant, and hollow. I choose. His voice rang out, hollow as a tomb. Lysera of House Vanthorn. The hall exploded. Cheers and celebratory howls shook the ancient stone walls. Nobles embraced. Warriors stamped their feet in approval. The political alliance that would secure Valdren's borders for generations had been forged. And Illaoan felt something inside her shatter. The mark on her hip suddenly flared with agonizing pain. She let out a choked sob, collapsing in the shadows, clutching the spot where his teeth had once claimed her skin. It burned as if his bite was being ripped from her body. Through blurred tears, she saw Theon take Lysera's hand. She saw him lift it to his lips in the traditional gesture of acceptance. She saw the other woman's triumphant smile, while the man Illaoan loved showed nothing at all. He didn't look for her. He didn't hesitate. He seemed not to remember that she even existed. A sob broke from Illaoan's throat, lost in the chaotic roar of celebration. She stumbled backward, desperate to escape before the agony crushed her completely. Her shoulder slammed against a stone pillar, and her ankle twisted on the uneven floor. But she kept moving. She kept running from the moment her entire world collapsed. The servant corridors were ghost towns. Everyone had flocked to witness the ceremony. Illaoan fled through them blindly, one hand pressed against her burning mark, the other protectively over her womb. The child, his child, was growing inside her while he chose another. She would not stay to watch him wed Lysera. She would not remain in the castle where she had given him everything, where she had believed his hollow promises, and where she had been foolish enough to think a low-born healer could truly hold the heart of a king. Reaching her tiny room, she began to pack with trembling hands. A few dresses, her grandmother's pendant, and the herbs she had gathered to combat the morning sickness that had been plaguing her. She paused by the window, looking out at the celebratory bonfires being lit across the capital. Somewhere in that great hall, Theon was receiving congratulations for his wise choice. Lysera was likely already planning their wedding, and not a single soul knew that the Alpha King's true mate was vanishing into the night with his heir in her womb. Illaoan pressed a kiss to her fingertips and touched them to the frost-fogged glass. "Goodbye, my love," she whispered into the dark. "I hope you find the happiness you chose over me." She pulled her cloak tight around her shoulders and slipped through the servants' gate, swallowed by the winter night. She did not see the figure watching from the high tower. She did not see the amber eyes that suddenly flashed with a desperate, agonizing clarity. And she did not hear the howl of raw pain that tore through the sky minutes later, a sound so hollow and shattered that wolves across the kingdom raised their heads in shared sorrow. By the time Theon reached her empty room, Illaoan was gone. 3 months had passed, and the village of Thornwick had almost forgotten that its newest resident was a stranger. Illaoan had arrived in the dead of winter, claiming to be a young widow seeking refuge from her grief. Pitying her swelling belly and haunted eyes, the village elders offered her a small, abandoned cottage at the forest's edge in exchange for her healing skills. She had accepted without hesitation. Now, as spring struggled to break through the final breaths of frost, Illaoan had simply become the healer woman of the woods. She delivered babies. She set broken bones. She brewed teas for coughs and salves for wounds. And every night, she lay awake with her hands over her growing stomach, feeling the child kick against her palms. Sometimes, the movements came from 2 opposite sides at once, as if 2 tiny feet were pushing in different directions. The village midwife had remarked on the size of her bump, suggesting she might be carrying more than one blessing. Illaoan tried not to dwell on what that meant. "You are strong," she whispered into the darkness. "Strong like your father." The thought of Theon still sent sharp stabs of pain through her chest. 3 months, and the wound hadn't even begun to close. If anything, it had festered, growing more agonizing by the day. The mark on her hip had never stopped burning. Illaoan had checked it countless times, confused by how the scar tissue seemed to darken rather than fade. In the world of wolves, rejection was supposed to sever the bond entirely. The mark should have vanished within weeks, leaving only smooth skin and bitter memories. Instead, it throbbed with a heat that robbed her of sleep. It ached whenever the wind blew from the east, the direction of Valdrren. And sometimes, late at night, she swore she could feel something through it. A presence, a search, a desperate, clawing need. But that was impossible. Theon had chosen another. Their bond should have evaporated the moment he made that choice. Unless the bond was never one-sided to begin with. Illaoan shook the thought away. False hope was a poison more dangerous than any toxin she knew how to brew. "Miss Wren?" The voice at the door belonged to young Calla, the blacksmith's daughter. Using the alias she had given upon arrival, Illaoan set down her mortar and pestle, wiping her hands on her apron before answering. "What is it, child?" Calla's face was pale with a mix of excitement and fear. "Messengers have arrived from the capital. They bring news." Illaoan's heart constricted. "What news?" "The Alpha King," Calla gasped. "They say he has gone mad." The world tilted beneath Illaoan's feet. She gripped the doorframe to steady herself. "Mad?" she managed to ask. Calla nodded fervently. "The messengers say he has torn apart half the kingdom searching for someone, a woman. No one knows who she is, only that the king will destroy anything that stands in the way of finding her." Illaoan's hand moved to her belly. The baby kicked hard, as if reacting to the mention of its father. "They say crops are failing in the eastern provinces," Calla continued breathlessly. "The wolves have grown feral, attacking livestock even in broad daylight. The king's guard has been deployed to villages as far as the southern border, questioning everyone, searching every house. Searching for what? Illaoan whispered. For her. Whoever she is, she must have done something terrible. The messengers say the king has offered a reward of 10,000 gold coins for any information leading to her discovery. 10,000 gold coins, a fortune beyond imagining. Illaoan forced her expression to remain neutral. The affairs of kings are not our concern. Thank your father for the news. But after Kala left, Illaoan collapsed into a chair, her legs trembling. He was looking for her. Why would Theon seek a woman he had publicly rejected? Why would he tear his kingdom asunder for a lover he had cast aside without a second glance? Unless something had been wrong that night. Unless the cold emptiness in his eyes had been something other than indifference. A movement at the edge of the forest caught her eye. Illaoan held her breath. A silhouette stood among the ancient oaks, large, four-legged, with silver-gray fur catching the day's dying light. A wolf. As she watched, frozen in terror, another appeared beside it. Then another. 5 massive wolves, their amber eyes fixed on her cottage with an intelligence that was anything but animal. They had found her. The mark on Illaoan's hip exploded with a searing heat. She let out a choked gasp, stumbling away from the window as the pain radiated through her entire body. This wasn't the dull, aching burn she had grown accustomed to. This was a branding, an overwhelming fire, as if a red-hot iron were being pressed into her flesh. Beneath the agony, she felt something else. A massive, desperate presence pushing at the edges of her consciousness. The children in her womb kicked violently, movements coming from multiple directions at once. No, Illaoan whimpered, clutching her stomach with both hands. No, no, no. He was close. Not just his pack. Him. Illaoan's eyes darted around the cottage, calculating escape routes. The back door led to the forest, but if his wolves were already watching, they would catch her before she cleared 100 yards. The root cellar was discreet, but a wolf's nose would find her in minutes. She was trapped. The front door shuddered under a heavy knock. Illaoan's heart stopped. The wolves she had seen were in their beast forms. They couldn't knock. Someone in human form was standing on her threshold. Another knock followed, more urgent this time. Miss Wren, a strange male voice called out. Please, open the door. We mean you no harm. Illaoan let out a bitter, breathless laugh. Wolves hunting a pregnant woman across 3 kingdoms rarely meant no harm. It was a hollow comfort, but she had no choice. Flight was impossible. Hiding was futile. If she didn't open the door, they would simply tear it down. She grabbed the heavy iron fire poker from beside the hearth and approached the door. When she pulled it open, 3 men stood there. 2 were clearly warriors, their massive builds and alert stances marking them as the Alpha King's elite guard. But it was the 3rd man who commanded her attention. He was older, his dark hair streaked with silver, his face lined by decades of service. His deep amber eyes seemed to look right through her, filled with something that looked almost like relief. My lady, he said, and the title made Illaoan flinch. I am Brennan, first beta to the Alpha King. We have been searching for you for a very long time. I think you have the wrong person, Illaoan said, her voice steady despite the terror thrumming in her veins. My name is Wren. I am a simple healer. Brennan's expression shifted into something resembling sympathy. You are Illaoan, daughter of No House, formerly a servant in the royal castle. You bear the king's claim mark on your left hip and his child in your womb. The iron poker trembled in her hand. How do you know about the mark? Because the king has described it in agonizing detail to every wolf in the kingdom. Because he has not slept in 3 months. Because he is tearing down everything he built to find the mate who vanished without a trace. Brennan paused. May we come in? Illaoan wanted to refuse, but her legs were shaking. The mark was burning, and the children had finally gone still, as if listening. She stepped aside. Brennan entered alone, leaving the guards at the door. He surveyed her humble home, the drying herbs, The simple furniture, the narrow bed where she had spent countless nights crying into her pillow. He didn't choose her, Brennan said softly. I mean Lysera. He did not choose her of his own will. Illaoan's knees nearly gave out. What? On the night of the choosing, someone slipped a toxin into the king's wine. A wolfsbane extract mixed with other herbs we haven't identified. It suppressed his wolf, severing the connection to his instincts and his mate bond. That's impossible, Illaoan whispered. We thought so too, until the effects wore off 3 days later and the king woke up screaming your name. Brennan's voice turned hard. He had no memory of the ceremony, no memory of choosing Lysera. The first thing he did was run for your room, and when he found it empty, he nearly lost his mind. Illaoan sank into the nearest chair, her head spinning. Drugged. He had been drugged. The empty eyes, the mechanical movements, the total lack of recognition, it wasn't rejection. It was a violation. Who did this? She asked. We believe House Vanthorn, though we cannot prove it yet. Lysera's family has wanted their blood on the throne for generations. With you gone, and the king bound to their daughter by a public vow, they would have had everything they craved. Brennan knelt before her chair. My lady, the king is not well. The severed bond, the missing mate. His wolf has been fighting for control since the moment he regained consciousness. If he doesn't find you soon, we fear he may go feral permanently. A wolf separated from its true mate for too long can lose itself to the beast, and an alpha of his power would become a monster. I can't go back, she heard herself say. Lysera, the Vanthorns, they'll kill me. They'll kill my children. That is why I haven't told the king exactly where you are yet. Brennan pulled a folded letter from his coat. This reached the castle 3 weeks ago. Illaoan took the paper with numb fingers. The seal was broken, but she could see the Vanthorn crest pressed into the dark wax. The message inside was brief. The false mate has been located. The problem will be removed before the next full moon. Long live Queen Lysera. The blood in Illaoan's veins turned to ice. Assassins, she breathed. Brennan nodded grimly. We intercepted this by chance. We don't know how many were sent or how close they already are. My lady, Theon will find you with or without my help. The bond is guiding him. Every day, he draws closer. The mark on Illaoan's hip flared with a fresh wave of heat. He feels it too, the beta said softly. Every time your mark burns, he feels a responding fire. It is the only thing keeping him sane. Before Brennan could say more, a howl ripped through the afternoon air. It came from the forest perilously close and laden with warning. The beta snapped to his feet instantly. They've found us. Who? Illaoan asked, standing despite her trembling legs. Through the window, she could see silhouettes shifting between the trees. They were not the silver-gray wolves that had been watching her home earlier. These were different, darker, their movements coordinated with predatory precision, and leading them, stepping out from the gloom with a crossbow raised high, was a figure in black, their face hidden behind a wolf skull mask. The Vanthorn assassins had arrived. The first bolt shattered Illaoan's window before she could even draw breath to scream. Brennan moved with supernatural speed, shoving her toward the back of the cottage as shards of glass rained onto the floor. The 2 guards charged through the front door, shifting mid-stride, their human forms dissolving into massive wolves as they lunged toward the forest edge. Get to the cellar, Brennan commanded. Now. There's no way out of the cellar, Illaoan gasped. You only need to survive until reinforcements arrive. Another bolt hissed through the wooden wall, thudding into the timber inches from Illaoan's head. She saw a dark liquid glistening on the tip of the arrow. Poison, she realized aloud. They aren't trying to capture me. They want me dead quickly. Brennan's jaw tightened. House Vanthorn can leave no witnesses. He drew a long blade from his belt and pressed it into her hand. The blade is silver-wrapped. It will wound even a shifted wolf. Use it, if you must. Before Illaoan could respond, a pained howl erupted from outside one of the guards, she realized. Then, silence. Brennan's eyes flashed amber, his wolf rising to the surface. Hide well. Whatever happens, do not come out until you hear my voice, or the king's. But he was already gone. His body exploded into his wolf form as he dove through the shattered window to join the fray. Illaoan stood frozen in the wreckage of her home, the silver knife clutched in shaking hands. Through the broken glass, she could see shadows dancing in the twilight, wolf against wolf, the flash of blades, and the sickening sound of flesh meeting steel. The mark on her hip burned with a new intensity, and she sobbed at the sensation accompanying it. He was closer, so much closer. The bond between them thrummed with a desperate urgency, and for the first time, Illaoan understood that she could feel his emotions leaking through, a rage so vast it threatened to incinerate everything, a sharp, alien fear, and beneath it all, a profound longing that made her eyes sting. Through the window, she watched in horror as Brennan's wolf form was hurled against an ancient oak with bone-breaking force. He struggled to rise, blood matting his silver-streaked fur, but 3 dark wolves were circling him with predatory patience. He was losing. Illaoan's gaze fell to the cellar door. She could hide as Brennan had ordered, cowering in the dark and praying that reinforcements arrived before the assassins found her. But then Brennan would die. The guards were already silent, and she would be huddled underground, while wolves sacrificed themselves to protect her. No. She had spent 3 months running, 3 months hiding, 3 months letting fear dictate every choice. No more. Illaoan dropped the silver knife and pressed her palms together. The power she had suppressed since childhood stirred in her chest. She had always been told to hide this gift, always warned that healing magic, in one of common blood, would mark her as an anomaly, a thing to be eliminated. But she was already marked by death. What did she have left to lose? A golden light blossomed between her hands, warm, pure, and ancient. Illaoan stepped through the broken window into the chaos of the battle. The effect was instantaneous. Every wolf in the clearing turned to look at the pregnant woman glowing like a fallen star. The assassin wolves wavered, their ranks breaking as instinct conflicted with training. Illaoan walked toward Brennan's collapsed form, her bare feet leaving glowing imprints on the blood-stained snow. "You will not have him," she said, her voice carrying overtones that were not entirely human. "You will not have any of them." She knelt beside Brennan and pressed her glowing hands into his wounds. The beta gasped as the healing energy poured into his broken body, knitting bone and sealing gashes with impossible speed. One of the assassin wolves lunged at her, jaws snapping wide. The golden light around her flared like a sunrise. The wolf was blasted backward with a howl of agony, its dark fur smoking where the light had touched it. It scrambled to its feet and fled into the forest, followed by the other 2 in the pack. But not everyone had fled. The masked figure stepped into the clearing, crossbow raised high. Unlike the wolves, this assassin was entirely human, unaffected by the magic that had scattered the others. "Impressive," a female voice rang out from behind the wolf skull mask. "House Vanthorn will find it very interesting to know the king's little pet is a witch." Illaoan's power flickered. The healing she had poured into Brennan had cost her more than she realized, and her reserves were dangerously low. The assassin's finger tightened on the trigger, and then the forest exploded. Trees splintered like dry kindling as something gargantuan tore through the brush. The ground trembled beneath its approach. The remaining assassin wolves scattered in pure, unadulterated terror. The masked woman spun toward the sound, her crossbow swinging to track the new threat. She wasn't fast enough. A wolf, the size of a warhorse, lunged from the tree line, its fur black as the abyss, and eyes burning with golden fire. It moved, with a speed that defied physics, crossing the clearing in a single bound. Its jaws snapped shut around the assassin's crossbow arm with a sickening crunch. The woman's scream was cut short, as the massive wolf shook her like a rag doll, then tossed the broken corpse into the shadows. It spun, searching for more threats, but found none. Then, those burning gold eyes locked onto Illaoan. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She could only stare at the creature radiating power like heat from a great forge. The wolf approached her slowly, every step heavy with caution. Blood dripped from its muzzle. Its massive frame blotted out the moon. Yet, when it finally stood before her, it lowered its great head and gently pressed its snout against her belly. The baby kicked from both sides at once, as if two tiny bodies were responding to their father's presence. The wolf emitted a sound that was almost a whimper. "Theon," Illaoan whispered. The shift happened in the space between heartbeats. One moment, a wolf stood before her. The next, a man was kneeling in the blood-stained snow, hands hovering over her stomach as if he were afraid to touch her. He looked up, and Illaoan saw the Alpha King was weeping. Illaoan had imagined this moment 1,000 times during her months of exile. She had imagined rage, cold indifference, or him dragging her back to Valdrren in chains to face punishment for her disappearance. She had never imagined him on his knees before her, tears tracking through the grime on his face, his entire body shaking with repressed emotion. "You're alive," Theon rasped, his voice raw and broken, as if he had been screaming for months. "You're alive, and you." His eyes fell to the swell of her stomach. His hand moved toward it, then jerked back, stopping inches from the fabric of her dress. "May I?" he asked. The question shattered something in Illaoan's chest. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in 3 kingdoms, was asking permission to touch his own child. She took his hand and pressed it against her abdomen. The baby kicked immediately, movements coming from 2 distinct spots. Theon's eyes widened at the sensation, his palm flattening against her to feel more. "A child," he breathed. "Our child. Illaoan, why didn't you tell me?" The question broke the spell. Illaoan took a sharp step back, breaking the contact. The warmth of the moment evaporated into the cold reality of everything that had happened. "Tell you?" Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "When would I have told you, Theon? Before or after you chose Lysera in front of the entire kingdom?" Theon flinched as if she had struck him. "I didn't choose her. I would never. I saw it." The words tore from her throat. "I was there. I saw you take her hand. I saw you stand before your people and declare her your queen, while I hid in the shadows like a shameful secret." "Illaoan, please!" Theon stood, his hands reaching for her. "I was drugged. Brennan told you. The Vanthorns poisoned me. I have no memory of that night except waking up 3 days later to find you gone." "How convenient." Illaoan curled her lip, even as her heart bled for the agony in his eyes. "Convenient?" Theon's voice hardened. "You think any part of this was convenient? I spent 3 months hunting you, 3 months fighting my wolf for control, 3 months watching my kingdom crumble while I tore apart every village, every forest, every corner of the realm, looking for a mate who vanished without a word. Because you rejected me, because I was violated." The roar shook the clearing. The word hung between them, terrible and true. "You think I chose this? You think I wanted to wake up bound to a woman I despise while the woman I love had disappeared? While our bond was screaming in my chest and I had no idea where you were, or if you were even alive?" His voice broke on the last word, and Illaoan saw something in his eyes she never expected. Vulnerability. A raw, desperate hurt from the most powerful wolf in the world. Illaoan's anger finally began to soften. The bond. She had felt it too, every single day of her exile. The burning mark that should have faded but never did. The ache that followed her into sleep and greeted her upon waking. The sensation of him searching, always searching, like a distant lighthouse she could never quite reach. "I thought you threw me away," she whispered. "I thought everything you said was a lie, that I was just a convenient distraction until you were forced to choose someone worthy of your crown." Theon closed the distance between them in 2 swift strides. His hands cupped her face, tilting it up until she had no choice but to look into his eyes. "You are worthy of everything," he said with fierce intensity. "You are my mate, my true mate. The bond recognized you before I even knew your name. Did you think I would give that up for politics, for power, or for anything in this world or the next?" A sob escaped Illaoan's throat. She had kept her pain locked inside for so long, building walls around her shattered heart just to keep surviving, But now, with his hands on her face and his words piercing her defenses, those walls were crumbling. "I waited for you," she choked out. "That night, I waited in my room for you to come. I was going to tell you about the baby. I practiced the words 100 times. Theon's expression broke. "Illaoan. And when you didn't come, I went looking for you. Instead, I saw you choosing her, kissing her hand, looking at her as if she were your future, while I stood in the dark with your child growing inside me." She hit his chest, but the blow had no strength behind it. "Do you have any idea what that felt like?" Theon caught her wrists and pressed her palms flat against his heart. "I know," he said softly. "I know exactly how it felt because I've spent every moment since that night living with the knowledge that I failed you, that something was done to me that made me betray the most important person in my existence." His heart hammered beneath her hands, strong, steady, and heartbreakingly familiar. "I haven't touched Lysera," Theon continued. "I haven't even been in the same room as her since I regained my senses. The council is threatening rebellion. Half the nobles have withdrawn their support." He gave a bitter, jagged laugh. "They think I've gone mad, Illaoan, and perhaps I have. But I would rather burn this kingdom to ash than let anyone but you sit beside me on that throne." The mark on her hip flared with heat, and she felt his answering pulse through the bond. His claim on her, though unfinished, still echoed deep within her soul. "The Vanthorn sent assassins," she heard herself say. "They want me dead." Theon's eyes hardened into solid gold. "Then the Vanthorns will learn what happens to those who threaten my mate." A rustle from the forest edge interrupted them. Brennan stepped forward, his body still bearing the marks of battle despite Illaoan's healing. "My king," the beta said cautiously. "The assassin you just dealt with was Serena Vanthorn, Lysera's sister." The name hung in the air like poison. "Then there is no more need for pretenses," Theon said grimly. "House Vanthorn has openly attempted to assassinate the true Queen of Valdrren. This is war." His hand moved back down to her belly, cradling the curve where his children grew. "They tried to take everything from me. My mate, my heirs, my own will. I will not allow them to threaten our family ever again." A howl rose from the forest, long and mournful. It was followed by dozens of other voices joining in a chorus that seemed to shake the very earth. "The king's wolves have arrived," Brennan said. "All of them." Illaoan looked over Theon's shoulder to see silhouettes emerging from the darkness. Wolves of every size and color filled the clearing, their eyes gleaming with fierce loyalty. "We return to Valdrren tonight, unannounced," Theon declared. "Illaoan goes with us. House Vanthorn must pay for their crimes before the next moonrise." Illaoan opened her mouth to protest, wanting to argue that she wasn't fit for a hard journey, that the babies needed rest. But when he looked at her, his amber eyes softened with such tenderness that she found she could refuse him nothing. "Together?" she asked softly. Theon pressed his forehead against hers. "Always, my heart. From this moment until my final breath, together." The journey back to Valdrren should have taken 3 days, but the pack covered the distance in 1. Illaoan sat before the Alpha King on his massive black warhorse, his arms wrapped securely around her waist, his body shielding her from the biting winds. She had initially protested, but Theon had simply lifted her into the saddle, silencing her with a look that brooked no argument. "My wolf needs you close," he said, his voice thick with emotion. 3 months apart nearly destroyed us both. I will not let you out of my sight until the bond is finalized and every threat to your safety is eliminated." So Illaoan yielded, leaning back against his chest and feeling the steady rhythm of his heart against her spine. The children seemed to approve of the arrangement, lying peaceful for the first time in weeks. As they rode through the night, Theon told her everything. He spoke of waking from the fog to find Lysera in his chambers, attempting to finalize a marriage he didn't remember agreeing to, of the horror that filled him when he realized what had happened, and of banishing Lysera and placing her under house arrest. He spoke of the search that had consumed every waking moment since. "My wolf knew you were alive," he whispered into her hair. "The bond never truly snapped. Every time I tried to accept that you might be gone forever, I felt a warm pulse, and I knew you were out there somewhere, waiting for me to find you." Illaoan's hand moved to cover his on her belly. "I felt it too," she confessed. "The burn that never faded, the dreams that felt more real than waking." Theon stiffened behind her. "You dreamed of me every night? I came to your room. I spoke to you in words that you somehow understood. You said you loved me, that you would find me, that nothing could keep us apart. It wasn't a dream." Theon's voice grew hoarse. "My wolf. When I slept, he sought you through the bond. I thought I was imagining it, but you actually felt," he choked up, "overcome." Illaoan turned in the saddle to look at him. Beneath the silver moonlight, she saw the dark circles under his eyes and the gauntness of his cheeks, testament to the months of suffering etched into his features. "We have both been through so much," she whispered, "apart when we should have been together." Theon's hand rose to cup her face. "Never again," he swore. "Whatever comes, we face it as one." He leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative and cherishing, but as Illaoan's hand wound behind his neck, pulling him closer, something ignited between them. The bond roared to life. Illaoan let out a soft sound against his lips as a tide of sensation flooded her. His emotions crashed into her with overwhelming power. A desperate, consuming love, a fierce, unyielding hunger, and beneath it all, a protective fury that wrapped around her like armor. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Theon's eyes burning solid gold. "Soon," he promised, his voice rough with restrained need. "When you are safe, when our enemies are purged, I will finalize the bond properly, and you will never have to doubt my devotion again." They reached the outskirts of Valdrren as dawn stained the sky in shades of pink and gold. The capital spread before them, its ancient spires reaching for the heavens. But something was wrong. Smoke rose from several sectors of the city. Distant screams echoed, and on the great banner flying over the castle gates, the royal crest had been replaced by the silver serpent of House Vanthorn. "No!" Brennan hissed. "They wouldn't dare." Theon's arm tightened around Illaoan as a low growl vibrated in his chest. "They have taken the castle. How is this possible?" Illaoan asked. "You've only been gone for less than a day. House Vanthorn has planned this for months, perhaps years. They didn't just want me to marry Lysera. They wanted to replace me entirely." A rider burst from the city gates, galloping toward them at a reckless pace. It was one of Theon's scouts, his face gray with fear. "My king!" he gasped. House Vanthorn struck at midnight. They had allies within the guard. "Lord Vanthorn has declared himself regent, claiming you have gone mad. Lady Lysera has been hailed as queen." A roar tore through Theon's throat. "There is more. They have taken hostages, the servants who remained loyal, the guards who refused to kneel. They are to be executed at noon for treason, all 37 of them." Illaoan felt the blood drain from her face. "Including the old nurse who served the royal chambers?" she asked, her heart hammering. "The one who helped me during my time in the palace, Marta." The name hit Illaoan like a physical blow. Marta, who had brought her extra blankets when she was cold, who had covered for her absences when she snuck out to meet Theon in secret, who had suspected the truth but never breathed a word. "We have to save them," Illaoan said fiercely. Theon looked down at her. "Illaoan, you cannot enter that city if the Vanthorns catch you. If we do nothing, 37 innocent people die. I will not have their blood on my hands, Theon. I will not let Marta die because she was kind to me." For a long moment, the Alpha King was silent. Then, slowly, a predatory smile spread across his face. "My queen," he whispered. "Even now, you think of others before yourself." He turned to the gathering army of wolves behind him. "House Vanthorn believes they have won. They believe their treachery has succeeded, that their puppet queen sits secure on a stolen throne." His eyes blazed with golden fire. "They are wrong. Today, we take back what is ours. Today we show traitors what happens to those who threaten the king, the true queen, and the heirs she carries." The army surged forward like a tide of fur, fangs, and righteous fury. Leading them, with his mate held tight in his heart, the Alpha King rode to reclaim his throne. The battle for Valdrren was brutal and brief. House Vanthorn had anticipated resistance, but they had not expected an army driven by 3 months of bottled rage and the primal instinct to protect their king's mate and unborn heirs. Illaoan watched from a protected vantage point on the hillside as Theon led the charge. Even from this distance, she could feel his wrath through the bond, a wildfire burning through her own veins. His wolf form was a terrifying specter of death, tearing through Vanthorn's lines like parchment. Within an hour, the outer walls fell. Within 2, the castle gates were splinters. But as the sun reached its zenith, a messenger arrived with news that turned Illaoan's blood to ice. "My lady, Lord Vanthorn has barricaded the Great Hall with the hostages. He says if the king does not surrender, he will execute them all, starting with the old nurse." Illaoan was moving before she could think, ignoring the guards Theon had left to protect her. Her body ached from the journey, and her back screamed under the weight of the pregnancy. None of it mattered. She had to reach the hall. The castle corridors were chaos. The scent of blood was heavy in the air. Following the pull of the bond, she found Theon at the doors of the Great Hall, held back by Brennan and 3 other wolves. "You cannot go in there," Brennan said. "That is exactly what Vanthorn wants. If I do nothing, innocents die," Theon replied, his voice a jagged rasp. Illaoan pushed through the guards. "Theon." He spun at her voice. "Illaoan, I told you to stay back." "I know what you told me." She stopped before him, chin lifted in defiance. "And I am telling you that I will not hide while others die in my place. This isn't your fight. Do." It became mine the moment House Vanthorn decided I was an obstacle to their ambition. Illaoan placed her hand on his chest. "And it became mine the moment I loved you." Theon's breath hitched. In all their months together, through all the whispered conversations, neither had spoken those words so openly. "Illaoan," he whispered. "I love you," she repeated, stronger. "I loved you even when I thought you betrayed me. I loved you through 3 months of exile, and I will not let that love turn me into a coward now." She turned toward the hall doors. "Lord Vanthorn," she called out. "I am Illaoan. I am coming in alone." "Illaoan?" "No." Theon grabbed her arm. She looked back at him. "Trust me, please." Something passed between them through the bond, not words, but understanding, trust. And beneath it all, a desperate prayer. Theon let her go. Illaoan pushed open the doors. The scene inside was worse than she imagined. 37 hostages knelt in a row, pale with terror. Armed Vanthorn soldiers stood behind them with blades drawn. On the throne sat Lord Aldrich Vanthorn. Beside him stood Lysera. "So this is the creature that caused so much trouble," Lysera said, her lip curling. "A servant with a swollen belly. Pathetic." Illaoan ignored her, her eyes finding Marta among the hostages. "Run, child," Marta whispered. "Run while you can." "I'm done running." Illaoan faced Lord Vanthorn. "You want the king's surrender. I'm offering you something better. Me, the king's mate, and his heirs. Take me as your hostage. Release the others." "No!" A roar erupted from behind the doors. Theon's agony ripped through the bond like shattered glass. Vanthorn smiled. "An intriguing offer. Very well, I accept." "Father, wait!" Lysera hissed. "We should kill her now." "Patience, daughter. A dead hostage has no value. A living one, carrying the royal heirs." Vanthorn's smile widened. "Guards, release the prisoners. Take the girl." As the hostages stumbled toward the doors in a blur of relief, and as brutal hands seized Illaoan's arms, she felt a strange calm. The bond with Theon throbbed with his panic, but beneath that, she felt something else. The children stirring within her. The children were the result of a true mate bond, something that hadn't appeared in the royal bloodline for 5 generations. And those children, though unborn, carried their own magic, a magic that was waking up in response to the threat against their mother. Golden light began to radiate from Illaoan's belly. Vanthorn's eyes widened. What is this? The light spread, flowing through her limbs. Unlike her healing magic, this was wilder, more primal. This was the power of the wolf. Pain exploded through her as her bones began to shift. No, she gasped, falling to her knees. Not now, please. But the shift would not be denied. 3 months of suppressed change, held back by her own fear, now demanded release. The children's waking power had triggered what she had fought since the night Theon marked her. She was becoming a wolf. The doors of the hall exploded inward. Theon charged in his full wolf form, his massive black body a blur as he lunged toward her. Vanthorn drew a sword, a blade shimmering with the telltale hue of wolfsbane poisoned steel. If I cannot have the throne, Vanthorn snarled, raising the blade over Illaoan's convulsing body, then neither shall he. The sword descended and stopped. Illaoan's hand, no longer entirely human, caught the blade. Silver-white fur covered her fingers, and claws that hadn't existed moments ago dug into the steel. The wolfsbane burned her palms, but she held on. No! She roared, her voice carrying ancient power. The transformation completed in a burst of golden light. Where the pregnant woman had knelt, a wolf now stood. Her fur was the color of moonlight on snow, her eyes burning with amber fire. She was smaller than Theon's massive frame, but no less magnificent. Illaoan lunged, her jaws snapping shut around Vanthorn's sword arm with devastating precision. The Lord screamed as bones shattered. She shook him once, twice, and flung him aside. Across the hall, Lysera shrieked, "Kill her! Kill them both!" But the remaining soldiers were backing away. They had signed up for a coup, not to face 2 frenzied wolves of the royal bloodline. One by one, they dropped their weapons and fled. Theon reached her side, his black fur pressing against her white. Through the bond, she felt his overwhelming relief and fierce pride. You shifted. His voice rang in her mind. Illaoan, you shifted. I had a little motivation, she replied, amazed at how natural the mental link felt. The black wolf let out a sound that might have been a laugh. My brave, extraordinary mate. Lysera had snatched up her father's fallen sword and was stalking toward them. You ruined everything, she hissed. You were supposed to be a nobody. Illaoan shifted back into her human form, her body flowing through the change with ease. She stood before her enemy, a hand on her belly where the children were, miraculously unharmed. I took nothing, Illaoan said softly. The bond between Theon and me was forged by fate, not ambition. Your family tried to break it with poison and lies. All you did was prove that true mates cannot be parted by the schemes of lesser wolves. Lysera screamed and lunged. She never reached her target. Theon's jaws closed around her wrist, forcing her to drop the sword. He shifted back to human form, pinning the struggling Lysera as his pack flooded the hall to secure the remaining Vanthorns. Lysera of House Vanthorn, Theon declared, you and your family are charged with high treason, the attempted murder of the true queen, and conspiracy against the crown. You will face judgment. Guards brought cloaks to cover them both. Theon wrapped Illaoan in the warm fabric with trembling hands. Are you hurt? He whispered. Illaoan paused, checking herself. Her body felt different now, stronger, more vibrant. The lingering aches were gone. I'm fine, more than fine. Theon's hand found her belly, and his eyes widened as he felt the movement from 2 distinct spots. The child. The children, Illaoan corrected gently. I think there are 2. The shift, I think it helped. Their magic triggered the change. They saved us all. Theon choked back a sob and pulled her into his arms. Through the bond, she felt the walls he had built around his heart finally crumble. I thought I lost you, he whispered. I know, Illaoan pulled back to cup his face. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Never again. Theon's eyes searched hers. The bond, he said, his voice thick. It needs to be completed properly, if you will have me. Illaoan thought of everything. The secret meetings, The broken heart, the battle, and the glorious, terrifying moment she embraced her inner wolf. "I will have you," she said. "I have always been yours, Theon." Then he kissed her in front of the gathered pack, in front of the defeated Vanthorns, and in front of the hostages who wept with relief. When they pulled apart, Theon tilted his head, baring his neck in the ancient gesture of a wolf offering himself to his mate. "Mark me," he said. "Make it whole." Illaoan knew instinctively what to do. Her inner wolf rose, guiding her movements as she pressed her lips to the juncture of his neck and shoulder. She felt his pulse thrumming beneath her mouth. Her teeth sank into his flesh. The bond exploded between them. It wasn't pain, it was completion. Two halves of a single soul finally became one. Illaoan felt Theon's essence pour into her just as hers flowed into him. Every memory, every emotion, every secret corner of their hearts was laid bare. She saw the night of the choosing through his eyes not as the empty puppet she had witnessed, but as the horror of waking 3 days later with no memory of what he'd done. She felt the desperation of his search, the way his wolf had howled in agony every night. She felt his terror, seeing Vanthorn raise that sword over her. And he saw her, not as a nameless servant, but as a woman of extraordinary courage, the healer who had won a king with her kindness, the mother of his children, his fated mate, chosen by destiny itself. When Illaoan finally let him go, they were both shaking. "My queen," Theon rasped, pressing his forehead to hers. "My king," she replied. Around them the pack began to howl, a celebration of victory, of justice, and of a true mate bond, finally and forever sealed. In the weeks that followed, House Vanthorn faced judgment before the assembled wolf clans of Valdrren. Lord Aldrich was executed for his crimes, his final moments spent pleading for a mercy he had never granted to others. Lysera was exiled to the frozen northern barrens, stripped of her name and her wolf, condemned to live out her days as the nobody she had once accused Illaoan of being. The kingdom slowly healed. The crops that had withered under the weight of the Alpha's grief began to flourish once more. The wolves who had grown feral, driven mad by the severed bond between their king and his true mate, regained their senses as the completed union radiated peace and stability throughout the realm. The people of Valdrren welcomed their true queen with a joy that took Illaoan by surprise. She had expected suspicion, perhaps even hostility, from those who had witnessed the choosing and believed her an interloper. Instead, she found only acceptance. The pack could sense the truth of the bond between her and Theon. They could feel that this was exactly what fate had always intended. On a warm spring evening, as the sun set over Valdrren in hues of gold and rose, Illaoan gave birth to twins. A son with his father's dark hair and his mother's gift for healing. A daughter with a silver-white coat when she shifted, and eyes that already sparkled with amber fire. Theon held his children with tears streaming down his face, his massive warrior hands becoming impossibly gentle. "Thank you," he whispered to Illaoan, who lay exhausted but radiant in their bed. "For fighting for us, for believing, even when I gave you every reason not to." Illaoan reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the claim mark on his neck that mirrored the one on her hip. Both had healed into beautiful silver scars, proclaiming their union to all who saw them. "I never truly stopped believing," she said softly. "Even in the darkest moments, something inside me knew we were always meant to find our way back to each other." Theon leaned down to kiss her, their children nestled safely between them. "Always," he agreed. "In this life and every life that follows, you are my heart, Illaoan, my mate, my home." Outside the window, the wolves of Valdrren raised their voices in a chorus of joy, and in the great tapestry of the kingdom's history, a new chapter was woven, the story of a servant girl who became a queen, of an alpha king who tore his world apart to find true love, and of a bond that could not be broken by poison, politics, or even the cruelest twists of fate. They had found each other against all odds, and they would never be parted again. Thank you so much for listening to this journey. I hope you enjoyed the story of Illaoan and Theon. A huge thank you to everyone following along. Your support truly means the world to me. If you loved this tale of fated mates and ancient magic, stay tuned for the next adventure. What kind of story would you like to hear next?